Welcome to Star Potential, a podcast where we explore the meaning of our existence while having a few laughs and sometimes tears through stories from the road of life. I'm your host, Julie Jo Hughes. As a stage performer, my life is quite literally about song and dance. I believe that life here on Earth is a playground for discovery, not a contest to be won. We ask questions together like, how do I evolve my consciousness? And how do you sing a passionate ballad when there's an old guy in the front row with his balls showing? True story. Stick around for these fun conversations. Welcome back to Star Potential. I'm your host, Julie Jo. Today, I am so excited to talk to you about how to implement more play into your life. So this is something I alluded to in the trailer and in episode 1. And as a stage performer and someone who has done all kinds of live performance in my career and throughout my life, from the time I was a child to every day of my adult life, I have found some way to do some kind of performance, whether that's acting, singing, dancing, usually a combination of the three. And sometimes it's just speaking in front of others. And I have worked in various sales industries where it really comes back to being engaging and helping people with something. As a performer, sometimes that's just taking their mind off of something for a little bit, or working with some of the direct sales companies I worked with. It can be literally walking someone through training, how to set up certain physical parameters within their business, working through mental blocks, technological blocks, things like that. But there is this element of play that brings us back to the present moment. And that's what I want to dive into a little bit today, and how we can do that on a practical level and not just a metaphorical level. So as I alluded to here, my life has quite literally been about song and dance, and still is. So I know a thing or two about how to just play and see what happens. But when that comes to our daily life, there is so much value in our creative expression. And even if you are not a person who is a performer by trade, I think no matter what kinds of hats you are wearing through these different roles that we play in our lives, there is so much value and so much to be discovered when we're willing to let go of the past and the future and live right in that sweet spot of the present moment, living from a place of curiosity and discovery. And from that place where we're not trying to attach anything to the analytical part of our mind that goes, I've seen this before and I can categorize it as this. Instead, we are actually experiencing the experience itself rather than narrating a story that we're telling about the experience that we're having. Does that make sense? To give you a practical example, this is something that you can use if you're feeling a little bit stuck. This can be on a particular project, or it could even just be in life. You're feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I have forgotten who I am. I need to get back to, I forgot where I was headed. It's like you're on a long journey and suddenly you look around and go, I don't recognize any of this. How did I get here? I have this fun phrase where I say, what are the life choices that led me to this moment? I have a friend that we say this at every performance. We had this fun, I don't know, fun is a strong word maybe for this situation. We had worked together on various projects before as bandmates. And one of our bandmates had kind of put together, someone had come to her and said, do you have an 80s band you can bring to this private backyard party that we're doing? And she said, yes, I can make an 80s band. And so she came to us that were in this 70s tribute band together and said, do you think we could play some 80s songs and go perform for this backyard party? And we're all experienced musicians. We've all played all those songs already. And we said, yeah, of course, we can be an 80s band for that night. We were just going to make it happen. It's an area of Southern California where, we don't get rain on a regular basis, but there was a bunch of rain that night. There was thunder and lightning, which is incredibly unique to Southern California. And when we got to this backyard, which was like in the middle of nowhere, my friend describes it. We pulled into this backyard and he said, I feel like I'm on the set of King of the Hill. And if you've seen that cartoon, you can picture exactly what he was referring to with that. We arrived at this backyard and it seemed like very redneck. They were rigging together this stage. It's like wobbling. There's metal all around us. The actual stage the platform that we're standing on is complete metal. And then they just have these kind of like 2x4s over the top of us. And as we are arriving, they are putting like more wood up there. And then they're trying to kind of jimmy rig a tarp over the top of this. And that was supposed to protect us from the rain and lightning. And we climbed into the van and we're watching this fiasco, this catastrophe happened in front of us. And I just started feeling like, this can't be it. This can't be the end. This can't be where I die. I can't have my children think that as I was leaving them at home each night, that this is what I was running off to do, to play in some king of the hill backyard. And this is how I exited this earth, is playing on this metal stage and got struck by lightning. I can't go out like that. And so we were trying to decide as a collective, are we going to go through this? And the girl that got the gig said, I think if we walk now, like they're not going to pay us anything. And I said, I think the value of my life is more important than this one gig right now. I can't go out like this. And as we were having this discussion, we looked at each other and I said, do you ever just look around and wonder, what are the life choices that I made that led me to this exact moment? So that is something that we still quote to this day whenever we are in like a weird gig, because now we're in a whole other tribute band together. And my friend and I look at each other and say, what are the life choices that led me to this exact moment? Oh, so that's just a little side note for you. But as we are embracing this idea that life is a playground of discovery, it's not a contest to be won. Sometimes we're driving along this road of life and you go, how did I get here? What are the life choices that led to this moment? Where was I headed? I need to go back and remember, like, where was I trying to get to when I set off on this journey, right? And so sometimes we have to just go back and check in. Sometimes I have found it can be incredibly helpful to do the opposite of what seems like the intuitive choice. So I want to rewind about 2 years when I was at a very volatile time, when I was definitely in the road of life, pulled over on the side of the road going, what are the life choices that I made that led to this moment? I don't remember where I'm going anymore. I don't remember why I set off in this direction, but it feels like I'm going the wrong way. And where do I look to find out what's the right way? And that can be the hardest question sometimes. And sometimes we have to go a few more paths in the wrong direction to go, no, this doesn't feel right either. Let me go back to that fork in the road. Now let me try this spot. No, this also doesn't feel right. And sometimes we have to do a lot of falling on our face like that before we find what is the right path. But there's this very great tool that I discovered that I want to share with you today. I was reading the book at the time, which I would recommend anything he writes, by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I was reading Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Even before reading this book, I was beginning to feel like I didn't know how I arrived where I was, but nothing felt in alignment anymore. It didn't feel like anything I was doing was bringing me the fulfillment that it used to. It felt like my values had shifted. It felt like my priorities had shifted, and I wasn't even sure what my current priorities were. And I needed to just stop and pull over on the side of the road and reevaluate for a bit. And so during this time, I started feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it feels like everything I'm doing is wrong. So there must be another way. And then I was very drawn to this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Through reading this book, I began this experiment. And I continued this experiment for the next full year. I decided I was going to commit to this. It wasn't really like an overnight decision. I just kind of started playing with it. And then the outcomes were so interesting to me that at some point it developed into, I'm just going to stick with this for a while and see what kinds of changes my life would make in a year if I could really stick to this. And so what I did, and this is the tool I invite you to try on for yourself. There were lots of intuitive I shouldn't even say intuitive, inherent decision making, like, am I going to have coffee or water? That's whatever I felt like doing, right? But whenever it came to some decision that felt like a little bit more of a fork in the road, maybe it was someone called me for a gig opportunity and I was trying to assess because my priorities and values were shifting. They had already shifted, but I was trying to discover and name what they were in this new season. And as I was reevaluating all of that, I would try to run things through my new system of checks and balances, so to speak, where before my first questions might have been, how much does it pay? Where is it? Now I would still want to know those things, but I would have different questions. Like, I didn't necessarily ask the person offering the job, but I would look at my calendar and I would look at the night before and I would look at the night after. And I would assess not just based on that day, but let me take a fuller picture. What's the rest of my week look like? Am I going to be already exhausted going into this gig that's a 3-hour drive away? And then the next morning, my son has a soccer tournament that I'm going to have to miss because I won't be back yet, or I will have only had 2 hours of sleep. So maybe I'll go, but I'm not really present. And then I don't really get to be a good mom the whole weekend because I'm exhausted, and I did that 6 nights in a row. I started looking at a bigger picture. Whenever it came down to, I had kind of assessed all these things and I wasn't sure whether to say yes or no, I would ask myself, what would the old Julie do in this situation? And there was a common theme that I noticed, that usually old Julie would do whatever she felt like she should do. And usually it had everything to do with pleasing someone else or making someone else feel comfortable, and very little to do with what was actually best for me and my family. But here I was saying that my family was top priority and that my health was top priority, but I wasn't living that truth. And so whenever I came up against something that I wasn't sure whether to say yes or no, I would say, what would old Julie say? And if the answer was yes, then I didn't even think about it any further. My answer was no. So whatever I would normally do, the old person that I would just try doing the opposite. Just literally as like a fun experiment, just to see what happens in my life. And the first 10, 20 times, it felt really unsafe to my body. I was super stressed about it. I kept rethinking the decision. But what I noticed after continuing this pattern for months and then up to a year, and then it even expanded beyond that year, was I was becoming someone new. And there was something really fun and exhilarating about doing the opposite of what felt like the intuitive choice. And what I discovered was that what I was choosing a lot of times actually was the intuitive choice. If I would look deep inside myself and ask, what do you actually want to do? That was the choice. But I wasn't there yet. At this stage in the game, the only thing I could do was go, well, what would I normally say in this situation? And sometimes, it was, no, I don't really want to do that. And if that was the answer, I would try the other way. Yeah, let me try that. Oh, I'm only getting paid $50 that night? Okay. That's so hard for me to say yes to. And I would do it anyway, because that was my experiment. Whatever I would normally do, I would do the exact opposite. What I discovered after a year of doing this was that it was actually so thrilling to play and discover something new. And a lot of times, because I made a different choice than what I normally would have done, it almost felt like the universe was rewarding me in a way for trying something different, for trusting what was actually my intuition and not just this ego mind, which was keeping me in survival mode. Instead, I tapped into this creative side of myself that was like, I don't know, let's see what would happen if I would do this. That voice is not afraid to fail. That voice knows that her worth and value is so much bigger and goes so much further beyond than this body and this persona of Julie Jo. that voice knows that I am something much deeper and something eternal, not just this human experience that Julie Joe is having. And so by allowing myself the freedom to try something different, and little side note here, I didn't make choices that were going to put myself or anyone else in harm's way. Okay, a lot of times these would be, to an outsider, probably silly little decisions. But to me, I was brick by brick changing the foundation of how I approached decision making, how I approached running something through my values system. And it turned out to be so much fun. And I discovered all these things about myself along the way that allowed me to step into a more authentic, a truer version of myself. I was able to be unapologetic about the decisions I made. I felt actually more confident when I would deliver my answer because I had run it through my value system first. If it felt like I wanted to say an answer based on old me and not on my new value system, I knew immediately what my decision was. And so while it started out as a playful experiment, what I learned in the end is that it wasn't just about doing the opposite of what I always did. It was really about discovering how to tell the difference between that ego voice and about that true essence voice. That was the valuable lesson. But the practical tool that I'm giving you that will help you get there is just play. Just try. What could you do a little bit differently? What could you do in an opposite way that would allow you to discover new parts of yourself that you didn't really know? And in doing that, you free yourself from the shackles of this self-imposed prison. It's like you've been living your life a certain way because you thought that was the only way to live. And then suddenly somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, you know, there's a back door. You can just go that way. And you turn around and go, what? There's been a back door this whole time? This whole time? Yeah, we're in the Rockies. It reminds me of that line from Dumb and Dumber. You've had an extra set of gloves this whole time? But it's like that because sometimes we're just so stuck in these ruts of patterns that we don't realize there is another way. And it seems crippling. How could I do that? I never do that. I always say yes when someone asks me to do that. But can you be brave enough to have the courage to try something different and go with integrity and with love, say, thank you so much for asking me. I don't choose to take part in that because I am honoring this that I have the night before or the next day. But I so appreciate you thinking of me, and I'm sending you all the best. Our people-pleasing tendencies make us think that we're letting someone down if we say no to something, but you're actually doing them a favor. You may actually even inspire them to do something that's more in integrity for themselves. They may go, wow, she spoke her truth. She spoke with love. She spoke in integrity. And she's honoring the values that she has. She's not allowing me to walk on her, and she's not doing something that she doesn't really want to do just because she thinks she should. And by seeing that, it's actually inspiring. And they go, you know what? I want to honor myself too. So we're not just serving ourselves. It's not selfish to live in your truth. It's not selfish to experiment with what it would be like if you weren't just trying to please those around you. It's actually in integrity. It's your sovereignty. And in that, we invite others to do the same for themselves. So we're actually serving others rather than doing something that's inconveniencing them. Does that resonate with you? If it does, I sure hope that you will share this with a friend, and let's all together learn how to walk in our integrity, in our truth. And if you try this experiment, please share with me. Tag me on social media at the Julie Joe. Share with me, DM me, and tell me what happened when you were willing to do the opposite thing of what you'd always do. What did you discover? Until next time, make sure you stick around because in episode 3, I'm going to be telling you all about the time when I lost my voice as a singer and a voiceover artist and someone who talks to their children all day long. This meant I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was. I'm going to tell you that story coming up in the next episode. Until then, stay true and dig into your star potential. Thank you for tuning in to Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend or shout us out on Instagram with the tag @TheJulieJo. That's TheJuliejo. I made you a gift. Please visit us on Instagram to receive my Grounded in Gratitude singing meditation. Want a shot at our monthly giveaway? Please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts with your email or Instagram handle so we can give you credit. Thank you for your love and support. Until next time, keep shining your light. And that's a wrap.